Hello, everyone, and welcome to our first video series where we get to know our board a little bit. So, this is what we're calling Spotlight on the Board. And for our first episode, we have the president himself, Mr. Villaume. Hi, Brett. Good morning. How are you?
Hi, Rashmi. I'm very well. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. We had a great time meeting everyone at the symposium in April, and now we're following it up with just a few more conversations with the board, so that essentially the members as well as non-members get to know the folks who are at the helm of the CMT Association. So let's get into our conversation.
Great. Thank you.
All right, Brett. First thing that I'd like to know from you. How did technical analysis happen? Did you choose technical analysis or did technical analysis choose you?
It was more the latter. It's a fun question to answer for anybody who's been practicing technical analysis for a long time, to reminisce about how they first discovered, quote unquote, technical analysis. For me, I was following a quite traditional path of professional finance. And money management. I was part of a student managed investment group in college, and where I learned fundamental analysis and portfolio management concepts as part of my economics major, and that sort of fueled my fire, so to speak, to seek out a job in a stock brokerage or having something to do with money management and/or investment analysis. And I then got lucky and found a firm that was a boutique brokerage. In other words, it was small and specialized. And its specialization, unlike a lot of boutiques that focus on some sort of industry sector, its specialization was technical analysis. And the founder of that firm and the president was a member of the CMT Association, and several CMT charter holders worked there. And their focus was sort of the upside down version of what a lot of practitioners of technical analysis typically do, which is they had technical analysis was the overarching investment philosophy for all of the everybody at the firm, and fundamental analysis was actually an afterthought, almost like a safety net, if you will, to the analysis that they were performing. So they did consider fundamental analysis to be important, but it wasn't the primary tool. And I was young and naive. I didn't know any better. A lot of the interviews at that firm that I had with multiple partners, they asked me if I knew anything about technical analysis, and I admitted that I had never heard of it, which is really I think that these days, fewer and fewer college students are ignorant of technical analysis. But back before, everyone was using the internet, it just wasn't very well, it wasn't taught in universities. So I spent 5 years at that firm and was on a daily basis surrounded by technical analysis in open floor, seating arrangement. So I was surrounded by people trading and making phone calls to institutional clientele, talking about technical analysis ideas that they had. So I was completely immersed and very lucky. And then I also, almost immediately after working there, was encouraged to attend a CMT chapter meeting in Atlanta, Georgia, where I live. So I started meeting CMT charter holders right away. And I thought that was normal. And I was quite attracted to the fact that there was this designation that would give you credibility in the marketplace. And I hadn't heard of the CFA yet. And I was immediately attracted to the CMT. Later on in my career, it sort of grew, if you will. I don't think my technical analysis, my use of TA in my profession never waned. If anything, it just accelerated and grew. Right. But I added to that education and understanding with fundamental analysis later on in my career, and eventually built out sort of a more well-rounded investment philosophy. So.
Right. Wow, that's quite an interesting journey. So yeah. I mean, yeah, you started out with fundamental analysis with the knowledge of it, because I think traditionally that is what was being taught at a college level, right? As you mentioned.
Right.
Now a lot of courses do include and incorporate technical analysis. So to me, it's quite a surprise when youngsters from my batchmates as well, or youngsters after me, and they come and tell me that, you know, technical analysis was taught to us in school, and it's like, oh wow, we did not have that luxury. So yes.
Yeah. Well, to the to the extent that TA is becoming more accepted, I don't mean to characterize the the state of acceptance of TA back when I first got a job out of college as being sort of diminished or weak in any way. For example, this firm was quite successful. They ended up selling to J.P. Morgan for a lot of money, and the value proposition that people were contacting institutional money managers with was quite attractive to them, and they had a pretty successful track record of landing large accounts and investment management firms by simply showing them the value of technical analysis. So, yeah. Anyway.
Probably ahead of its time, and the firm, at least in their ideas. Yeah. There's the brilliant mug. Okay, so Brett, at this point, at this juncture where you've had a ton of experience in this market, what is your favorite part of your job at the moment?
My favorite part of my job at the moment is absolutely being able to provide a disciplined opinion about the direction that the market is moving. Now, the market is, defined. I define the market as several different asset classes, and they all work together to in unison to sort of become what we call the market. So what I really mean is having an informed opinion and about different asset classes. And then the reason I find that so rewarding is because I can speak to clients about it in a way that they understand, even if they don't have any background in finance, and it's effective. So I get the message across, and they are very appreciative of my ability to translate what I see in the market. And sometimes it can be very confusing states to the average layperson about what's going on in the market, and that's the most rewarding thing that I can do. And then the CMT designation absolutely gave me that ability. It did come from years of practice as well, and interacting with other CMT charter holders. But without the CMT designation, I wouldn't be able to do that, I don't think, because I would have just been guessing all these years and probably doing a half good job. And so, yeah, I think that's it. Also, at my firm, assisting others there with a better understanding of market forces is also equally rewarding, but ultimately comes down to interaction with the clients.
Right. Yes. So you mentioned early on that very early in your career, you were exposed to the chapter meetings of the CMT Association. What sort of a role has the association played in your career?
I think one, volunteering to lead a chapter or just participate, helping to get the word out, or in other words, trying to recruit people to come, or finding guest speakers on behalf of the local chapter. That probably was the first time that the CMT Association started to help my career. And it was very small. It was, sort of the burgeoning beginning of it. And it helped me gain credibility in in Atlanta with even CFA Society members, other stock brokerages, paid attention to who I was, and I made great colleagues and friends early on because of volunteering. So that was one. Also, interacting at events with other CMTs, other CMT charter holders. that helped on a national level. And to be honest, I really didn't have any contacts internationally for at least the first 10 years that I was a member. And now I have friends and colleagues worldwide because of my association membership. So I think it's helped me from a networking perspective most of all. If I were to point to like how it's benefited me, I mean, I already mentioned why my education through the CMT program was beneficial to my job. But in addition to that, being an ongoing dues paying member has built up my network to thousands of people worldwide, and I'm quite pleased with how that's gone.
Yeah, and that's quite a power, huh? To have your network across the globe. That's absolutely amazing.
It's wonderful. You can gain perspectives. You can reach out to your network and ask them about all kinds of stuff, not just what's going on with their markets, but what's going on with their careers, with how others are perceiving the value of technical analysis in other parts of the world, and nationally here in the U.S. too.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So you've been a part of the association from the outside, say as a member, earlier as a non-member and then as a member, and now you are the president of the association. What are your aspirations going forward?
Well, for the association, my aspirations personally are to I've been on the board 8 years. It's to finally hand over to somebody else. No, I'm kidding. No, it's I think my aspirations for the association are to see it continue to grow internationally, because the use of technical analysis is ubiquitous, and it is, I think, years ago, some people who came way before us described technical analysis as like a language that we all speak. And I love that definition, because it absolutely is true that it doesn't really matter where you are in the world, or even what types of markets or like stock markets exist where you can interact as a participant. Technical analysis is a tool that you can apply day one. So I think I'm most excited to see the CMT Association and the use of technical analysis grow worldwide. So what does that mean? Well, the association has taken great strides in trying to provide resources to people in non-US markets who have an interest in being a member of the association and learning about TA. And the Asia Pacific region is the largest new recipient of dedicated resources. Obviously, with the India liaison office that we opened, and now have transferred into being a full-blown private limited company, that's Exhibit A in that goal. Now, that said, there are plenty of other markets that we have the ability to grow into, and it isn't pushing on a string, as they say. Demand is already there. All we have to do at the CMT Association is allocate resources and effort to helping people in these locations to become members and promote the designation and build networks. So that's the track that the CMT is on, and as leader of the board, that's the biggest focus we have. I don't want to characterize it as a secondary focus, but an equally important focus is to maintain and continue to build the reputation of the CMT charter. So the CMT designation, the program had a lot of money and effort put into it over the last decade that resulted in the program that we have today, which is an integrated curriculum run through Wiley Corporation, and then the testing that we do, including remote proctoring, is arguably an attractive professional designation on par with all the others, including CFA. So I consider that to be a big success of ours. But that being said, you can't assume that that'll happen forever. It takes dedication and effort, on behalf of staff and all of us members to make sure we continue to support the reputation of CMT. Because after all, I mean, we pay dues for multiple purposes, not the least of which is to be able to claim that we have these letters after our, and that there's value for that, for paying for that. So those I think are the biggest focuses of the board and the staff, and that's the direction that I hope that after I depart the board, that it just continues on and on the track that it's on, because I think we have great momentum. And the people involved, including volunteers at chapter levels, the board members and staff are all really talented people, and we're in a great place. So
yeah, onwards and upwards.
Yes.
Okay. But in today's world where quantitative analysis and artificial intelligence has become the norm, how relevant do you think technical analysis continues to be in a changing world?
More so than ever, but the interest in technical analysis by quantitative analysts has been there for decades. And I see this quite often in my hometown in San Francisco, California. There are universities, two very large, prestigious universities in the San Francisco Bay Area that have strong scientific communities around them. One is in Silicon Valley, and the other one is across the bay at Berkeley. And there's a never-ending supply of people who are adept and skilled at quantitative analysis and methods, and computational finance is their target. And they don't know much about the stock market. And they are extremely interested in learning more about technical analysis, as well as other disciplines like fundamental analysis, so that they can apply their skills. Now, I think that the marriage of TA and quantitative methods is a match made in heaven, as they say. And if I were a quantitative money manager, I would build an almost strictly technical analysis model. So that's been around for a long time. Nothing new, honestly, right? And I think it'll continue in the future. There might have been at one point some fear that quants are going to take over the world, and all other disciplines will fall by the wayside, and everything's just quantitative methods. I don't think that's going to be true, or at least I think it's already proven out that these are investment philosophies like technical analysis stands on its own and always will. But what is new, though, is behavioral finance. And I think that technical analysis has identified what a lot of the, quote, tenets of this field of behavioral finance many, many years ago. They may have sort of defined the field in a different way, but the concepts are the same. So I think that the growth and identification of behavioral finance as a legitimate investment philosophy also very closely gels with what technical analysis is. And so I think that as behavioral finance gains popularity, so too will technical analysis. So I hope that answers your question as to how relevant the CMT is today and how relevant TA is.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. You were speaking about the marriage made in heaven, right, of technical analysis and fundamental analysis, and you've been an advocate for that for quite some time now. Over the years, have you noticed more acceptance of that idea as more and more people start delving into both aspects of analysis?
Surprisingly, I have to say no, but that's a good thing. Okay. Yes, more and more. I think that the acceptance of the fact that trends and momentum exists, the fact that a mean reversion investment strategy is. That is the. If you think about it, the underlying decision criteria of every value investor is that at some point the price will revert to what the mean. what the fundamental investor would call intrinsic value. But that being said, I do think that the difference, the differences between fundamental and technical analysis remaining quite on opposite sides is a good thing for everyone. What the investment philosophy of TA is a recognition that price is fact, and that intrinsic value may exist. It is debatable, right? But assuming that intrinsic value does exist, that there does not need to be an exclusive focus on that, and instead you can focus additionally or even exclusively on price as fact. So the fact that they exist separately, and that some people may reject one or the other as a legitimate investment philosophy is fine. In fact, it just builds upon the credibility, I think, of technical analysis as an investment philosophy. And so the two should work hand in hand more successfully than one on their own. But I don't think that when people say that they're equal or that you have to use one or the other, I don't necessarily believe that. I think that they should stand on their own, and they probably always likely will stand on their own as investment philosophies. And there probably will always be controversy in the future about whether or not one is better than the other. And that's a good thing for both sides, I think.
True. Yeah. Keeps both sides on their toes. So
yes,
works well. Okay. Brett, when you started your journey in the technical analysis field, was there any particular indicator or any particular pattern or anything that you undermined at that point of time, which only came back later to make its importance felt?
I've always I was sort of born into a volume and trend following methodology. So when I say volume, I mean volume confirmation of trends. Mean reverting strategies were never really in my wheelhouse of expertise. But I think when it comes to indicators specifically, I have to say, I think that it was Elliott Wave that I have cast out and now reaccepted. And I want to explain why. The reason that I finally came back around to why Elliott Wave has value is because of when I taught technical analysis at Golden Gate University, part of the introductory curriculum was to understand the basics of Elliott Wave. And I found myself explaining the basics in terms of what I'd already taught the class throughout most of the course, which was I used Martin Kring's textbook, Technical Analysis Explained, and he, in the very intro chapters, explains how price patterns form. In other words, sort of the waves that define a trend over time, a series of higher highs follow and higher lows, and how to recognize when those trends change. And there's defining evidence that becomes obvious that the trend has changed, and you can identify those quantitatively. And I realized that by looking at the elementary rules of Elliott Wave, that was the same thing. It was the same thing as what Martin was explaining, only it was providing a more, let's say, history and relevant example by saying, well, the way that technicians typically define trend is very vague, and it could apply to really long time frames. There could be many, many waves in there, but it appears as though from the intro text that you don't really care. Whereas Elliott comes around the Elliott wave theory and suggests that within waves there are repeating human emotions that take place in every wave that happens, and it isn't always exactly well defined, but I found myself explaining it very well using Elliott wave theory of the 5 and 3 waves that make up an 8 wave count, and why that actually logically makes sense. So that got me all the way back around. Now, am I an Elliottician? Not at all. But now I listen, and now I respect people who do talk about technical or Elliott wave and try to use it successfully. There's some fellow board members of mine are very adept at it. Also, I know some colleagues at Elliott Wave International who I really like and respect, who do a great job explaining to everyone, even people who are not Elliotticians, why Elliott might have value. Again, I'm not practicing it myself, but that is a great example. I think that's the best example of somebody who immediately thought that they knew everything and then came back around and realized there's more to it than you think. I could go on about also point and figure charting, which I kind of went through a similar journey with, but I think Elliott Wave is probably the best.
Yeah, I think that's the market's job, I guess, just putting us in our place, saying, hey, you don't really know everything. So
that's right. Yes, we're all students of the market.
Yes, absolutely. So speaking of students, for all those new members, students appearing for the first, second, or third level of examination, or those who have gotten done with all 3 levels and are waiting for their CMT charter, do you have any message for them?
Let's see. I think my message would be for a CMT program candidate and a new CMT member is community. It's all about community, and the reason is, the reason is because that's what I first experienced when I was in the program, and I first got the charter, was how rewarding it was to talk to the people who were also going through it with me, or were technicians. I would encourage you to start out small and just try and make a friend or two and start talking about technical analysis and charts. You probably already are to a great extent, right? So you say, okay, well, I already am. What more should I do? I think that if you attend events, now that the pandemic has subsided, hopefully, that's more rewarding than you think it's going to be. And the reason interpersonal relationships just go so much further than just being online. Being part of a community to post stuff on Twitter or on TradingView is wonderful, and you get great ideas that way. But talking is really the ultimate. The other thing I would suggest you do too is always be thinking about how you can translate what you know into understandable explanations for people who don't know TA. And I know you've probably heard this before, not you, Rashmi, but the CMT program candidate. Well, you have definitely, but the CMT program candidates and also early CMT charter holders, you've heard before people sort of lecture you and say, you can't just talk about RSI. You have to talk about the concept of momentum. And then you have to slowly introduce people on the outside of TA to what you're talking about, because it's full of a lot of jargon, and it can seem overly scientific, at which point you start to lose people. And research, I used to think for a long time that a quality product sells itself, and if your research is superior, that you don't have to work to convince people that it's good. And I don't believe that at all. That's not true. Okay. In my old age, I've learned, marketing is not a bunch of baloney. It actually is necessary and required for you to actually be successful.
Even for the highest quality product, yes.
Yeah. Even if we wish that that it weren't that way, it is true that it's that way. So I would encourage you to put in the effort to learn to speak the language, not of fundamental analysis per se, but just how to translate the more complicated concepts in technical analysis, which you were learning and have learned, into everyday language, and that'll go a really long way for you.
That's true. That's absolutely great advice. I think that's one of the most important things, because having great ideas is not enough. Communicating those very great ideas is where the key lies. So I think, you pretty much hit the nail on the head.
Right.
Great. Thank you so much, Brett, for giving us this time and sharing all of your ideas with us. And,
You're welcome.
Yeah, we hope.
Thank you,
we hope
Rashmi.
Absolutely, absolutely. We hope all of you listeners out there learn a lot from Brett's experience. And if you have anything that you'd like to share or that you'd like to talk to us about, then you can reach out to us on our website. Thank you so much.
Thank you.